Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and we have a new world champion in Pokemon Go. This past weekend, I was in Anaheim, California, and watched as Beelzeboy was crowned the 2025 Pokemon Go world champion. And similar to what I did with Yakai last year when Yakai won, I asked Beelzeboy, the newest Pokemon Go world champion, what is your favorite climbing team for the Open Great League? And he was kind enough to respond, saying Galarian Moltres, Shadow Marowak, and Tinkaton. These three Pokemon were also used on his world's winning team. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and I'm going to test out the newest Pokemon Go world champion, Beelzeboy's favorite climbing team in the Open Great League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a good lead Galarian Moltres into Credilli. As we learned from watching Beelzeboy at the World Championship, Galarian Moltres could always win this matchup in the 2-shield just going straight fly. As the moment the opponent no shields a move, Galarian Moltres will always be able to get a full farm down with Sucker Punch in the 2-shield. I'm going to fire off Flying number 2, pressuring a shield from my opponent, and I'm more than happy to double shield for switch advantage. I'm going to exit this matchup with a lot of energy, but of course at 2 stages of attack debuff. In comes Giratina, I'm going to save a Brave Bird, pivot into the Shadow Marowak. My opponent does not decide to throw, so now I will get to connect with the hard-hitting Bone Club. Bone Club is going to be shielded in the back. They're going to have their own Marowak. This is not the Shadow Marowak, but either way, by baiting this out, I'm going to win the game because Tinkaton will be able to very comfortably handle that Giratina. Their Marowak Bone Club will knock out mine, but I can bring in the Galarian Moltres, overfarm quite significantly, and unfortunately for their Giratina, there's just no hope against Tinkaton. I get to send in Tinkaton, and unfortunately Dragon Breath Giratina is just completely shut down here. They can fire off the Dragon Claw. At this point, they're just BMing because they know there's no way for them to win this game. They fire off the back-to-back Dragon Claws, doing basically no damage. Tinkaton just an absolute nightmare for Dragon Breath Giratina, and Play Rough KOing will give me the Game 1 win. We move to game number 2, and it's a pretty nice lead for the Galarian Moltres leading into Shadow Scizor. Scizor will go for the Trailblaze. Moltres does have the ability to tank this move and go for the fly, but since they're staying in, I'm expecting my Moltres will have value in the back. I could have committed to a farm down, but I'd rather look to try and get the shield back, or if they no shield, keep myself a little bit healthier. So I'm going to be forced to give up the final shield, but I exit with switch advantage, and switch advantage is usually pretty nice into Scizor backlines. They send out Credilli at its Brave Bird time. Brave Bird, big damage into Credilli, and now I get to bring in Tinkaton. They're going to switch, and in the back is Jellicent. Jellicent actually could potentially be a problematic Pokemon here for my backline. Jellicent has quite a bit of energy. They're going to go for the Surf, understanding that Double Surf is probably going to be the way. I will go for the Play Rough, and then I need to switch in the Marowak. If I switch now, I know that a Surf will not knock me out, and I can guarantee to land a Bone Club. That is very important damage. These Mud Slaps are adding up quite a bit as well, and the fact that I will be on a 3 cycle will be very, very helpful coming up here shortly. As I'm just dealing so much damage, they're forced to fire off energy, trying to preserve what little health they have remaining. I should be 2 off of the Bulldoze, actually 1 off the Bulldoze, but I'm still going to throw 2 and the move. Bulldoze should be knocking out that Jellicent, and then all that's left is Credilli. Credilli can make the Grass Knot, but unfortunately for them, everything is resisted. Grass Knot will not be enough to KO. We make it to the Play Rough, and Tinkaton is able to clutch an endgame once again. Down goes Credilli, and we move to 2-0 with the team. We move to the next match. We'll have to check the fast move on this Golisopod, and it is Fury Cutter. Fury Cutter Golisopod actually makes life very uncomfortable for Galarian Moltres in the Great League, because the Fury Cutters do so much fast move damage that they can actually farm me into Aqua Jet range. I'm able to grab a shield advantage, and honestly, that's good enough for me. I am just going to trust in 2-shield Shadow Kanto Marowak to close out the game. I bring in Tinkaton to absorb energy, but they make a really nice play. They're understanding that I'm probably weak in the back to Golisopod energy, so they save a massive amount of it, and they're going to pivot into the Dusclops. I don't have a good response to a Dusclops safe switch other than staying in with the Tinkaton. Tinkaton will be hit with the Shadow Punch. I will get Play Rough number 2, and this will be getting my opponent deep into the red health. So Play Rough is going to land. I throw 1, switch into the Marowak, and catch what should be a Shadow Punch into the Tinkaton onto the Marowak. Marowak now has an energy head start. In comes Golisopod. They have so much stored energy from earlier. Golisopod needs to get to a 3rd Aqua Jet. It's going to be be very, very close. Can Marowak get this farm down? Marowak with the double shield. Golisopod does not get there. We get the full farm down, and now I have so much loaded energy. I'm down a shield. What do they have in the back? It's going to be Tinkaton. They waited their clock, which means after this charge move, their switch is up. So I have to watch for the catch. There is the catch attempt. If my opponent was successful in catching the Bone Club, I was going to lose this game because they would have been able to neutralize the Marowak and then just had a very healthy Tinkaton. But thankfully, my patience pays off as they're forced to fire off the Play Rough. That will knock out the Marowak, but I can bring in the Tinkaton. It's a race to the charge move that I will win. And now Bulldoze will KO the opposing Tinkaton. Bit of a tricky lead, but we're able to escape with another win. We see a familiar lead in the next match. Moltres into Shadow Scizor once again. This Scizor is going to be farming up. They go for the Trailblaze. And like last time, I will decide to commit the shield here. Trailblaze will obviously boost up their bullet punch damage. This time I decide to play it by fully farming down. Obviously this is a new team to me, it was just recommended, so I want to try and figure out what way ends up feeling a bit more comfortable. Diggersby is going to be shielding up the fly bait, and I will get to the Brave Bird as well. My opponent probably going to be double shielding here, I imagine, so they have an incredibly healthy Diggersby. I'm going to bring in the Marowak to the Diggersby. Diggersby will be firing off the Scorching Sands and will have to check for any potential attack drops. Thankfully, no attack drop will come through. I will fire off the Bone Club. There is a catch onto Giratina. Nice catch by my opponent. I didn't throw after one because I felt that that's when they would catch. But unfortunately, by over-farming, I ended up throwing at a very predictable time as well, so my opponent is able to catch. The good news for me is that with switch advantage, this backline is just so devastating. My opponent can fire off Shadow Sneak after Shadow Sneak, and it just simply will not matter. Here I'm going to farm up, past the double Bulldoze. Bulldoze should be knocking them out, and now I should be only one off of the Play Rough. So when they bring back in the Diggersby, this will be some very valuable damage, and then I can bring in the Marowak and close out the game with a win. That actually ends up being a CMB tie, which is even better for me. Fire Punch will KO the Tinkaton, but back in comes the Marowak, very low on health, but with more than enough energy to secure the win, as Bone Club will knock out Diggersby. We move to the next game, and my goodness, Shadow Scizor lead is out to play today. Scizor absolutely everywhere. This opponent does not build up to the Trailblaze. They're just going straight for the Night Slash, and since they're Night Slashing, I decide just to let this go. Night Slash does obviously mean they will get a second move, so I am going to be firing off the fly, and my opponent decides just to no shield. Opponent brings in Shadow Malamar, and I think this is a misplay from my opponent, because Malamar can never Psywave down here. Psywave only does 1 damage. Galarian Moltres does have some pretty solid HP. Look at the Moltres, it's refusing to get farmed down. Opponent's able to bank all that energy. They catch on the Azu, but now Tinkaton is just going to be absolutely impossible to get off the field for my opponent. They are going to be firing off Play Rough, but it just does not do anything to Tinkaton. And with the Fly Chip already onto the Azumarill, that should basically put them in a range where I can knock out with the double Play Rough. So I will farm up here, CMP tying the Azumarill with Play Rough number 2. Bulldoze would not be enough to pick up the knockout. They let it go, and now back in comes the Malamar. And unfortunately for the Malamar, they have all the energy they could ever ask for. They're basically at 100, and it's just not going to help them get this win. At this point, my opponent is realizing that they do not have a win con. They will go for the superpower to knock me out, but I can KO with 1 Sucker Punch from Moltres. Here, I decide to shield because I'm pretty sure it's 1 HP, and it will KO through the shield, and it does KO through the shield. So we take the win, but we got to have some fun along the way with Moltres getting knocked out. We see some serious spice on the lead, leading Moltres into Dragapult. When my opponent safe switches into a Shadow Marowak, I know the game is immediately over, as unfortunately, my opponent has team built in a way that they do not have an answer to Galarian Moltres. Galarian Moltres is just so consistent into the Marowak, they end up taking the shield advantage and sending out Fortress. Fortress is going to be put under a lot of pressure. I farm up well past the Brave Bird, going for the Fly Bait. The Fly Bait is going to be shielded, and now I will send out the Marowak. Marowak going to be answered with the Dragapult, but unfortunately Dragapult is just too frail. That's why it doesn't see a lot of usage. Bone Club plus the Mud Slap just KOs, and my opponent, oh, this is so unfortunate. That Dragapult just did absolutely nothing for them all game. They're going to fire off Sand Tomb number 1. Marowak tanking that very comfortably, and I will return fire with the Bone Club. Bone Club will be shielded. Switch clock not yet up, but I can send in the Moltres, get to the fly, and Tinkaton just gets to take the game off. As my opponent, unfortunately, was very weak to a lead Galarian Moltres, so we did not need our third. The tides turn as we see a terrible lead in the next match, leading into Galarian Weezing. Safe switch into the Marowak is going to be answered with Swampert, a good Pokemon to bait out, so Tinkaton will not have to deal with it, but also a Pokemon that Marowak should just be able to fully farm down in the 2s. Very similar to a Shadow Feraligatr versus Shadow Marowak matchup, where in the 2s, Marowak can just very comfortably slap all the way down, and the poor Water type can't really do anything to prevent that. Swampert will go for a second Hydro. I'm going to be double shielding the Marowak because if I get this farm down, my win condition is just crystal clear and I will get that full farm down. So Swampert has been removed from the field of play. Opponent is going to be bringing in their own Marowak now, and their Marowak will be met with the Bone Club. Bone Club will do quite a bit of damage. I'm going to get to another Bone Club, but I lose charge attack priority. My opponent's Bone Club is going to knock me out, and now I get to bring in the Moltres. In comes Weezing. Weezing will opt for a Sludge. That's very okay by me. I was going to switch when they got to a potential play rough, but a Sludge landing is very fine. I farm up to the Brave Bird and catch the Sludge. And with this catch, even if they end up having Sludge Overheat, I should just win the game because I have enough energy on the Moltres that I can take home the win. But my opponent does not farm up to the Overheat. They do not have it, they just have Sludge, and Sludge is not going to be doing a whole lot for them in this matchup. I will fire off the Bulldoze. Bulldoze is going to land. Bulldoze does get the debuff. In comes the Marowak, but the Marowak just does not have enough in the tank. Play Rough will pick up the KO. Quick switch into the Moltres, and there is the fly. I believe I had the Brave Bird loaded as well, but either move is going to knock out from this health range, and this team just continues its rampage. We see a little bit of spice in the next match, leading Moltres into a Shadow Credilli. Now, typically, I only ever see the regulars, so seeing the Shadow is pretty cool. I'm just going to go for the exact same play pattern. Spamming out flies, opponent is going to no-shield, and this will set up a very nice one-shield farm down for the Moltres. But the opponent says no, they're going to deny that farm down with a save switch into Shadow Blastoise. Shadow Blastoise in particular is a massive problem. A regular Blastoise cannot two-shot Tinkaton with Hydro Cannons and rollout damage, so it's a very okay spot to be in. But unfortunately, the Shadow can two-shot with the rollouts, meaning that I'm not going to survive here. And this matchup went from a pretty good start to an absolute disaster as Shadow Blastoise is about to run away with this game. Unfortunately, Moltres is going to get outpaced here. This Hydro Cannon will inflict some serious damage. Moltres able to hang on, going for the fly. There's a switch into Talonflame, and at this point, this game is unfortunately over. It's a Shadow Talonflame as well, but Talonflame will always get to a move, and Blastoise has a move loaded as well, meaning that, unfortunately, I will not be winning this game, and this team will finally take its first loss. I will get to knock the Talonflame out of the sky with a double super effective Rock Slide, but right on cue, there is the Blastoise. So good to know, Shadow Blastoise, a very difficult Pokemon for this team to handle, and unfortunately, we will lose that match. Hopping into the final match, we get the Dream lead, Moltres into Dusclops. They save switch into Shadow Drapion, but unfortunately, I'm far too slow on the switch-in. I switched after 2 Sucker Punches when I needed to switch after 1. This means that I will be forced to go down a shield in this mid-game, so pretty sloppy play overall by me. I will get the full farm down, but if I switched after only 1 Sucker Punch, then I could have fired off the Bone Club, forced the shield, or just got the knockout without having to go down a shield. Now, in comes the Dusclops, and I'm just going to be spamming out as many Bone Clubs as possible to try and make Dusclops' life difficult. Dusclops will be hit with Bone Club number 2. That's going to be no-shielded as well. Can Marowak make one final move? Yes, it can, and my opponent will catch it onto Lapras. Since they have Lapras in the back, they're just running ABA weak to the Moltres, so now I can send in Moltres, and Moltres is going to do a very nice job at handling this Lapras. I could have brought in the Tinkaton, but I figured that all that Dusclops energy, Ice Punches would actually add up on the Moltres, so the better use of the Moltres was here against the Lapras. They do have Ice Beam, that does big damage, but it will not be enough to KO the Moltres. Moltres will get to a fly, forcing the final shield, and just getting so much damage onto the Lapras. In comes Tinkaton, we farm up 2, wait the turn, and get the catch onto the Marowak, perfectly predicting that the opponent would go for 5 Psy Waves and the move. Now I will be putting up the shield on Tinkaton as I look to commit to a farm down. Opponent is going to switch into the Dusclops, and we get to fire off the Play Rough, denying Dusclops his energy. Play Rough picks up the KO. All that's left is the low health Lapras. Tinkaton farms down, and that is a good game. All in all, this team performed amazingly for me in early tests. I believe it went 13-1 across the 14 battles that I tried with it. So overall, the team very much impressed me. As I mentioned at the start, these were 3 of the Pokemon that Beelzeboy ended up using at the World Championships to earn the title of 2025 Pokemon Go World Champion. There are quite a few differences between a Show 6 Pick 3 style format and the Go Battle League, which is a blind 3s format, but Galarian Moltres still proves to be an incredibly strong pick. Trying this team was honestly a very interesting experience for me, because usually when it comes to my own team construction, I'll almost never be safe switching something as polarizing as a Shadow Marowak. I really like having Pokemon that at the very least in their bad matchups can try and force some kind of an advantage, and Marowak, when it's good, it's very good, but there also can be some matchups where it feels very much helpless. So this was a good learning experience, I think, for me in terms of trying out a style of team that normally I wouldn't necessarily run. Like typically, if I'm running something like a Tinkaton, I would want to make sure I have a very strong check to a Talonflame, and this team actually does not have a fire resistance. You obviously have the Moltres, which can at least fight back neutrally. You have the Shadow Kanto Marowak, which is Rock Slide, but is always going to get outpaced. And then you have the Tinkaton in the back. So it's definitely more of an unbalanced style team than I feel I personally like to run. But the results speak for themselves. I feel like this is a team that can be very powerful when operated well. Another reason why I think this team is very solid is being ABA strong into Shadow Giratina when it's absolutely everywhere right now is a definite plus. Because if opponents are trying out this new top-ranked Pokemon, it kind of has nowhere to run against this team. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.